A man standing in the presence of Jesus. He is not a criminal. He is not a skeptic. He has not spent his life denying God, running from church, or laughing at believers. He has spent his life, for years or maybe even decades, doing the work. He prayed. He fasted. He stood before crowds and spoke in the name of Jesus. And things happened. People were healed. Demons left. He did things most believers could only hope to see once in a lifetime. And on that day, when he stands before the one he called Lord, the one whose name was in his mouth every Sunday, every sermon, and every prayer, Jesus looks at him and says 5 words. I never knew you. Depart. Before we go any further, I want you to sit with the weight of what just happened. Because most people read that passage and assume the man must have done something terrible. There must be a hidden sin, a secret life, or a private wickedness that disqualified him. We look for the crack in his record. We need there to be a crack. Because if there is no crack, if a man can prophesy and cast out demons and do mighty works, all in the name of Jesus, and still hear those 5 words, then something we thought we understood about the Christian life is not what we thought. This is not a story about bad people. This is not a story about unbelievers. This is not a story about those who rejected God. This is a story about people who were absolutely convinced they knew him, only to discover, at the worst possible moment, that the word knew means something they never went deep enough to understand. And the key to everything, absolute everything, is hidden in a single Greek word. The word is Ginosko. In Greek, there are 2 primary words for to know. The first is Oida, and Oida means factual knowledge, awareness, information stored in the mind. If you know that Rome is in Italy, if you know the boiling point of water, if you know the first verse of John chapter 1, that is Oida. It is real knowledge. It is not shallow, but it is knowledge about something, from the outside looking in. The second word is Ginosko, and Ginosko is different in a way that should make you stop everything you are doing and pay attention.
This word does not signify knowledge about something. It is knowledge through experience, through contact, and through time spent together in the same room, the same pain, and the same silence. This is the word you use when you say you know a person, not their biography, but them, the weight of them.
The specific way they laugh when something is actually funny versus when they are being polite. The things they are afraid of at 2 in the morning. That kind of relational closeness. When Jesus stands before the man in Matthew chapter 7 and says, I never knew you, the word he uses is Ginosko. He does not say, I never had information about you.
He does not say, I never heard your prayers. He is speaking of a deep, covenantal bond. He says, I never had a personal, committed relationship with you. I never had that with you. In the ancient Hebrew mind, this runs through the entire Old Testament as the word yada, which is the deepest possible way of binding oneself to another.
It means to be fully present to someone, to be seen by them, to be open to them without hiding. God says it to Jeremiah before he is even born. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Yada. God says it to the entire nation of Israel through the prophet Amos. You only have I known among all the families of the earth. Not, you only have I been aware of.
Not, you only have I watched, you only have I yada, meaning you only have I chosen, committed to, bonded with, and been present to. It is the same word with the same weight. But it gets stranger, because if Ginosko carries within it the full force of yada, then when Jesus says, I never knew you, he is not making a legal verdict. He is not reading a charge sheet.
He is saying something closer to what a person says when they describe a failed marriage.
We lived in the same house. We said the right words. We went through the motions. But I never really knew you. You never let me in.
The text suggests that this man, the one who prophesied, who cast out demons, and who did mighty works, built a structural wall of religious duties, but missed the very heart of Christ.
Stay with me, because this matters more than almost anything else in the New Testament.
The Greek word translated as never in that verse is not a soft word. It is not yet, or not in the way I hoped. It means never, at no point, and not once. It is a wall with no door in it. I never, at any point or in any moment, had that intimate connection with you, which means the question we have to ask is not, what did he do wrong? The question is, what he never did. He never stopped his busy routine long enough to be present. His life appears to have been centered on doing things in the name of Jesus, rather than simply being with Jesus. He spoke the name. He wielded the name. He may have genuinely believed in the name, but somewhere between the believing and the doing, the most essential thing, which is the relational connection Jesus actually wanted, was left out. The prophet Hosea saw this coming 8 centuries before Jesus stood on that hillside. God speaks through Hosea in chapter 6, verse 6, and says, I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. God is saying, I do not want your ritual. I do not want your external routines. I want to be known by you. I want that experiential knowledge. I want the real thing.
And here's the part nobody tells you.
The people who heard Jesus say this on the hillside that day, the crowds pressing in from Galilee and Jerusalem and beyond the Jordan, they would not have missed the weight of that word. They lived inside the Hebrew scriptures. They knew what yada meant. They knew this deep relational language. When Jesus said, I never knew you, they heard it the way you hear it when someone says your name in a voice you have never heard them use before. They felt the ground shift.
Wow.
Because Jesus was not warning criminals. He was warning those devout followers who looked perfect on the outside. Before we go further, if this is already landing differently than you expected, you are not alone. Most people read Matthew 7 and feel a low-grade dread they cannot quite name. By the end of this video, I think that dread is going to turn into something else entirely, something closer to relief. If you are new here, this channel exists to go deep into the words most people skip past. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next. And drop a comment right now, just one word, that describes how you feel about the phrase, I never knew you. We will come back to those words at the end. Go back to Matthew chapter 7, verse 22. Read it slowly. Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name? 3 things. 3 public, verifiable, spiritually significant things, all done in the name of Jesus, not in their own name, and not for personal fame, at least not on the surface. They were done in His name, and notice what Jesus does not do. He does not tell us whether the works were genuine or not. He does not say the prophecies were false. He does not unwind the record and expose a fraud. He leaves the validity of the works aside. The only thing Jesus disputes is the personal bond, the knowing. To understand the kind of religious display Jesus was talking about, we only have to look at how the historian Josephus described the Pharisees of that era. Josephus, writing at the end of the 1st century, describes them with genuine admiration. He calls them the most accurate interpreters of the law. He says the common people trusted them above all others for their precision and their piety. These were people who were entirely earnest in their own minds. They fasted twice a week. They gave tithes of mint and dill and cumin, which were herbs so small you had to count individual leaves to calculate 10%. They prayed standing in the synagogues, and the prayers were not empty to them. They meant every word. And Jesus, in Matthew chapter 23, calls them whitewashed tombs. They were beautiful on the outside, but full of dead bones within. Not because they were insincere, but because being well-intentioned is not the same as having a shared bond. You can be deeply, painfully earnest in your outward show and still have never once sat still long enough to be seen, to be opened, to let the one you are performing for actually reach you. The man in Matthew 7 verse 22 does not sound defensive when he speaks. He sounds confused. Lord, Lord. This repetition is not arrogance. In first-century Jewish speech, repeating a name or title was a sign of urgency, of distress, and of genuine appeal. He is not boasting. He is bewildered. He genuinely thought the works were enough. He genuinely thought that doing things in the name of Jesus was the same as being known by Jesus. He spent his life, years, or possibly a lifetime, in active, visible service, and nobody told him that service and presence are not the same thing. Pay attention to this, because it is the hinge on which the whole passage turns. Jesus, in Matthew chapter 23, does not say the religious leaders do nothing right. He says they neglect the weightier matters of the law, which are justice, mercy, and faithfulness. These are not ritual categories. Justice, mercy, and faithfulness are relational words. They are words that only exist between people who are genuinely present to each other. You cannot perform justice at a distance. You cannot manufacture mercy as a transaction. Faithfulness, or hesed, meaning covenant loyalty, is what God called Israel to, and what Israel kept replacing with burnt offerings, tithes, and public displays. Hosea heard God say it plainly, "I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice." God desires covenant faithfulness. This is the relational word, the word that means, I am here with you, in the mess of it, not just performing the correct ritual from a safe distance. This man in Matthew 7 stayed at sacrifice. He stayed at external rituals. He stayed at doing, and doing is not knowing. And then there is that heavy silence. Never. Not, I knew you once and lost you. Not, I knew you in some seasons and not others. Never. At any point, ever. Which raises a question that should sit uncomfortably in your chest for a moment. Is it possible to spend an entire life inside the vocabulary of Christianity, including the prayers, the service, the ministry, and the name, and never once cross the threshold from Oida to a real, personal bond? From knowing about to being known by? Jesus says yes. He says it is not only possible, but he says it is a pattern, a wide road even.
And he says it with grief, not with anger. If you read the passage again, you will notice there is no heat in his words. There is something colder than anger. There is the quiet of a door closing on something that could have been but never was.
There is a man who lived 350 years after Jesus spoke those words on the hillside. His name is Augustine. He was born in the ancient Roman province of Numidia, in a city called Thagaste, in the year 354. By the time he was in his 20s, he was recognized as one of the most brilliant minds in the Roman world, teaching rhetoric to the elite. Yet, he was not living for God. He lived a life of ambition and indulgence, keeping a mistress and chasing worldly fame. Yet, underneath it all, he possessed a genuine, agonizing longing for something deeper. For years, he prayed a famous, conflicted prayer, "Lord, make me chaste, but not yet, not yet." He wanted God, but he was not ready to be fully seen. He kept God at a safe distance where he could intellectualize him through Oida without ever being truly transformed by him. The turning point came in the year 386. Augustine, now 31, found himself weeping in a small garden in Milan. The intellectual defenses had collapsed. He threw himself under a fig tree, overwhelmed by a raw spiritual crisis he could not even name. Suddenly, he heard a child's voice chanting from beyond the garden wall, "Tole lege, take up and read." He picked up a nearby scroll of Paul's letters, and his eyes fell upon the 13th chapter of Romans. In his autobiography, he wrote that a light of absolute certainty flooded his heart. It wasn't a new philosophical argument. It was the moment the last wall fell between his brilliant, performing self and the living God. That was the moment Oida became Ginosko. That was the moment Augustine stopped knowing about God and let God know him. Now, here is the answer to the question we planted at the very beginning of this video. What did the man in Matthew 7 do wrong? Nothing and everything. He did nothing wrong in the visible record. The prophecies happened. The miracles happened. The name of Jesus was genuinely spoken. But somewhere, right in the gap between the doing and the being, he kept a wall up. He let God be the audience for his spiritual masks, without ever letting God be the one who saw him when the crowd was gone. He gave God his ministry, but not his hiddenness. He gave him his works, but not his wounds. He offered his name invoking, but never his weeping under the fig tree. The New Testament points toward a definitive destination, which is being fully known, not knowing more facts about God, not performing more acts for God. It is about being fully known by God, the way Augustine was known in that garden, or the way Jeremiah was known before he was formed in the womb.
This is what the man in Matthew 7 missed. He was never fully known, because he never let himself be.
And here is the thing about Jesus saying, "I never knew you," that most people never reach, because they stop at the fear of it.
It is not a verdict on what cannot be changed. It is a description of what was chosen again and again, moment by moment, across a lifetime. Which means the inverse is also true. The opposite choice is also available. Right now, in this moment. Not in some future reckoning, but here, today, before the busy routine resumes.
John Chrysostom, the ancient preacher who analyzed the Greek text of Matthew 7 with profound precision, noted that being rejected from God's presence is far more devastating than any physical punishment. For him, the true terror wasn't just a legal sentence, but the absolute isolation of being unknown by Christ. Chrysostom understood that the most devastating thing Jesus could say to a person is not that they failed, it is that they were never truly present. Because to be unknown by the one who made you is a loneliness no miracle can fix. So let me leave you with 3 things. The first is this. This intimate connection is not a reward for high achievement. It is the thing external rituals were never designed to produce. You cannot prophesy your way into being known. You cannot cast out enough demons to earn the intimacy Jesus is describing. This deep covenantal knowing only happens in the place where the outward show stops and the real person shows up. That place is uncomfortable. It feels like the garden in Milan. It feels like weeping under a fig tree without knowing exactly why. But it is the only place where you can be fully known.
The second is this. You cannot fake your way into being known.
The man in Matthew 7 was not faking, and that is what makes the passage so difficult. He was earnest. His devotion felt real to him, but a focus directed entirely outward, toward works and words and visible ministry, is not the same as the inward openness that true intimacy requires. God does not want your best behavior. He wants the version of you that exists after the audience leaves. The one with the questions you do not say out loud. The fears that wake you at 3 in the morning. The prayers that feel too small, or too desperate, or too honest to say in public. That is the person he is asking to know. And the third thing, and this is the one I want you to carry with you. The 5 words Jesus speaks in Matthew 7, verse 23. "I never knew you, depart," are the most terrifying sentence in the Sermon on the Mount. Every serious reader of the New Testament feels it, that low-grade dread. But here is what I want you to hear. Underneath the terror of those words, underneath the weight of that closed door, Jesus did not have to tell us. He did not have to stand on that hillside and warn the crowd. He did not have to describe the man with the miracles and the confusion and the desperate, bewildered voice. He did not have to give us the entire vocabulary of intimate knowing threaded through the ancient scriptures like a river running underneath everything. He could have kept the verdict and left out the warning. He didn't. Which means the 5 words, as terrible as they are not the point of the passage. The point is what comes before them. The point is the open door that still exists on this side of that moment. The point is that this relationship is available, right now, not after you have done enough, served enough, or strived enough. It is available now, in the mess of whatever your life actually looks like when nobody is watching. Augustine found it under a fig tree at 31, weeping in a language he did not have words for yet. Jeremiah found it before he was born. And somewhere on a Galilean hillside, Jesus looked at a crowd full of busy, ministry-doing people and said, "I want to know you, the real you. Let me." Which man in Matthew 7 are you? Has there been a moment in your life, perhaps a garden, a fig tree, a 2 in the morning, or a thing you could not stop weeping about and did not fully understand, when you moved from knowing about God to letting God know you? Tell me in the comments. I read every one.
And if this went somewhere you did not expect, if Ginosko lands differently now than it did at the beginning of this video, share this with one person who needs to hear it. Not for the channel, but for them.
The door is still open. That is the whole point.